Okay, if you clicked on this video, there's a good chance you probably saw the title and came in hot, thinking something along the lines of,
What you just said is one of the most insanely idiotic things I have ever heard. At no point in your rambling, incoherent response were you even close to anything that could be considered a rational thought. Everyone in this room is now dumber for having listened to it.
and okay, fair enough, but you took the bait and you're here, and that's what it was meant to do.
We've been tricked, we've been backstabbed, and we've been quite possibly bamboozled.
So I'll be upfront with my opinion on this series. I wasn't a huge fan of it. It really was never my thing, but I will save the details for a little bit deeper into the video. However, just because I personally don't like something, that doesn't mean I necessarily consider it bad. I find a distinction between things that I consider bad and things that I just don't care for. So please at least hear me out and what I have to say all the way to the end before you start, jumping down my throat about it. For the uninitiated, Sakamoto Days is a shonen action manga series turned anime that follows the life of a former hitman by the name of Taro Sakamoto. In his time, he was legendary. But now he's just a fat old man operating a convenience store with his wife and daughter. Okay, fat old man may be a tad bit disrespectful because Sakamoto still got moves. He may be a touch rusty and much more pudgy than before, but he's by no means incapable of dishing out a whole serving of whoop-ass if he needs to. Either way, Sakamoto gets dragged back into his old life by a fellow assassin named Shin, when the young clairvoyant tries to claim the bounty on Taro's head. If you really want more details than that, you can go watch Season 1, because with that amount of information, you've basically got the gist of this whole show. From everything that I had seen beforehand, Sakamoto Days is a series that was propped up on the hype aura and OMG the fight animation potential kind of stuff. I will admit that this is perhaps a bit biased because social media algorithms do tend to feed you what they think you want. And around the time that this show came out, I was watching the conversation around how Season 1 was supposedly disappointing because the animation wasn't good. But to counteract that, I actually had read a singular volume of the manga before the anime became a thing, and I have watched both seasons of the anime, and I still feel like that's a decently justified interpretation. But does that make it bad? I will not lie and say that I think that this series is amazing. As previously stated, I read one volume of the manga and decided to set it aside for something a little more my style. Though I do see the potential appeal. While my taste in manga and anime tends to be a bit more on the esoteric side, I do understand that most people are not me. And that's why I tend not to mark things off as bad the moment they don't fit my tastes. So let's start with what I think Sakamoto Days does well that most people will likely enjoy. This series is a very heavily action-oriented one, with a good chunk of the runtime dedicated to specifically fighting. And as far as that goes, they're pretty cool. The series does a good job of diversifying people's skill sets. You'd be hard-pressed to come across two people in this series whose entire tool pouch is exactly the same, particularly with how quirky some of the themes can be. Handbags that turn into buzzsaws, katana blades coming out of people's heels, clairvoyants, drunken fist, wire snipers, people who shoot spikes out of their skin, and even a cyborg deer. No, fuck, no, please, let's not do that again. You see, Sakamoto Days is absolutely one of those anime where you're just supposed to sort of watch it without thinking too critically about it and enjoy the crazy action sequences where Joe Biden divides an entire building in half with one swing of a katana.
America is a nation that can be defined in a single word. I was going to put You're a lying dog-faced pony soldier. You said you were, but you're...
And I mean, that is pretty cool. Probably the coolest moment in the whole damn show so far. I mean, from entrance to exit, Takamura was just awesome. Unfortunately, this singular moment of absolute badassery is dwarfed by the rather unserious nature of the rest of the show. What Sakamoto Days attempts to do is blend the whimsical creativity of character gimmicks in with a very serious and grim setting. So while you do have absolutely awesome badasses like Takamura, you also get guys who look like Nokotan and Cyborg from Teen Titans decided to and now I am a firm believer that anything can work in fiction if the writer is skilled or dedicated enough to pulling it off. One Piece is a really good example of exactly what Sakamoto Days wanted to do. However, One Piece has one very important element which Sakamoto Days lacks that would have made this whole dynamic work. Exceptional writing. Because Sakamoto Days doesn't have the storytelling and world-building infrastructure to support its more eccentric and sometimes, frankly, impractical character choices, it really doesn't feel like the two elements play well with each other. On one hand, you have life-threatening assassin hijinks with an entire secret organization built around an industry of killing people. On the other hand, you have wild character gimmicks like a hitman filmmaker, a germaphobe with katana ice skates, and Bird Boy with a 3-round burst bolt-action rifle. That still triggers me to this day. It's like taking two flavors that are good and assuming that the combination must be good as well. Like trying to mix buffalo sauce with chocolate syrup. To me, it tends to feel like this show doesn't take itself seriously enough. And that really comes down to a lot of the characters being very surface level, the story just being an excuse for people to fight, and the world being put together just enough so that it isn't incoherent. But if you are someone like me, a pretentious fuckwit who overanalyzes everything, you probably start to see the cracks right away. And that's why I ultimately find myself not quite enjoying it as much as its core fanbase seems to. And I guess that makes me not the target audience. Sakamoto Days sacrifices things I like the most, while focusing on things that aren't necessarily as important to me. I really do hesitate to call it a normie anime, because that feels kinda rude, but it's the best way to describe it that I can think of. It does the action and the fun parts well, so if you want to sit down and just be entertained, I guess you could go for this. However, it really does become one of those you're thinking too much about it kind of shows. And to someone like me who tends to stew on stuff for a while afterward, it just doesn't resonate. Kooky and eccentric aren't really the core problem because I like shows like Dandadan and One Piece that are just full of crazy elements. Only when combined with the show lacking the kind of substance I enjoy in anime does it really start to bother me. All that said though, this really is just my opinion of it. It can be entertaining. Like I mentioned, there are some really good action sequences in this, but that alone doesn't hold my interest. Because when we talk about being carried by fights, it gets beat out by a long list of anime. Still though, calling it bad or calling it trash would be a lie. It does have its good points. But I personally just can't get into it. It's not selling something that I want. And to those of you who will say just don't watch it if you don't like it, does not enjoying the show preclude me from having an opinion on it or talking about it? That is genuinely the excuse of someone who doesn't want to engage with any sort of nuanced or complicated thoughts on something that they like. So I'm sorry that you can't understand the idea of me saying it's not for me, but here's what's good and bad about it. But hey, all of that is just the thoughts of a very pretentious nerd, so don't take it too seriously. If you enjoyed this video and you'd like to see more, please consider liking this video and then subscribing to my channel, because there will be plenty of other videos for you to rage at me over. Subscribe, or I may have to resort to stealing your dog.